Hello, welcome to the Psychology of Good and Evil.
First, this announcement: applications are being accepted now through December 6th to be a winter orientation leader. And this sounds like a good way to stay connected to Cornell and Ithaca this winter.
Another announcement, I want to tell you about a SONA research extra credit opportunity. Dr. Reyna's Laboratory for Rational Decision Making has a survey that you can take called A Study of Social Media and COVID-19 on SONA. So this is worth 2 SONA credits. It's a confidential survey, of course. It takes between 30 minutes and an hour to complete. And they would like you to know that it would be a huge help to their research, which is aimed at understanding how people communicate about COVID-19.
Today, we look at a range of work in evolutionary psychology on the moral sense. We'll look at the links between cooperation, aggression, and violence.
You might think, what could cooperation have to do with aggression and violence except to be antithetic to them? Well, in fact, there's a surprising overlap between cooperating collectively, demonstrating aggression, and prosociality. So we're going to explore cooperation and aggression from an evolutionary perspective on human behavior. Ultimately, we'll discover how cooperation and aggression can be difficult to sort into that good and evil category, respectively, because of how they interact and how they interact across species.
The science and theory I'll present first shows us that throughout our evolutionary history, cooperation actually entails aggression. This might be an unpleasant fact, but even more than just showing that aggression is difficult to deem evil, the research indicates that aggression itself has a dual nature. It's not one simple thing. It's both proactive and reactive, which we'll talk about. That's more and less related to its potential to be helpful for cooperation. These two kinds of aggression, as we'll see, are characterized by really different behavioral patterns and neural systems.
Further, the evolutionary perspective has led to science on the biological markers of violence and aggression, specifically the hormonal underpinnings, namely testosterone. We're going to cover some surprising findings representative of a shift in long-held assumptions about testosterone as a driver of aggression or aggressive behavior in general, which are likely too general. The picture is more nuanced, and we'll look at a study that gives you a taste of that issue. Finally, all this suggests that cooperation and aggression share a close relationship throughout evolution of the human being. How did humans make the jump, though, from these kinds of close exchange relationships to managing large-scale transactions with strangers at great distances? We're going to discuss one theory, Joe Henrich's theory about the evolved role of norms in institutions in making that happen.
So we'll start with the work of Sarah Brosnan, who's professor of psychology, philosophy, and neuroscience, and primatologist and ethologist Frans de Waal. They wrote together The Evolution of Responses to Unfairness, which offers up a perspective on the roots of what we know as a sense of fairness. This work shows a clear example of how cooperation entails aggression, namely in the form of retaliation to unequal allocations. The researchers began by pointing out that animals determine the benefits of cooperation through comparison with other animals. They don't pursue cooperation to enjoy moral superiority or peace of mind or quiet, but they do it because it's the way that they get more resources. and they need to compare resources with other individual conspecifics or groups to understand whether and how they will compete or cooperate. So it's not useful for fitness for animals to view benefits for their absolute value if they exist among competitive group members. When animals have one eye on their conspecific and one eye on their own prize, this will be beneficial for them. Cooperation among animals involves understanding that they're comparing to other animals, and they have a strong aversion to inequity. They view benefits in relation to what others get, and they have strong aggressive responses to unequal allocations. Researchers have learned that this aversion to inequity, it will reliably occur in the context of joint allocation, when there are two animals and each of them are receiving an allocation. It also occurs in situations when they need to cooperate for the rewards. When animals are dependent on each other to get more, negative reactions to unequal allocations are key to maintaining a cooperative system. If one animal gets less than another, like one chimp gets less than another chimp, he'll protest with vigor. This helps to ensure that the resources are allocated equally and the group is sustained. Animals' aversion to inequity aligns with what humans view as a sensitivity to fairness. But for animals, this aversion to inequity simultaneously occurs with aggression and violent responses, and I'll show you how this occurs shortly. The main ways evolutionary psychologists have investigated cooperation and aggression and fairness is by observing how animals naturally work together for rewards, how they cooperate, and what occurs when things go wrong. They've also observed how animals respond to receiving different allocations. So when allocations are varied systematically to the animals by an experimenter. We're going to talk about two forms of inequity aversion: disadvantageous and advantageous. First, disadvantageous inequity aversion is also called first order inequity aversion, first order IA. For humans, it strikes them as deeply unfair when one individual gets less than another, usually. And the person who gets less typically will protest. For non-human species like capuchin monkeys, it leads to protest as well, including striking, visible, vocal reactions. It's clearly not welcome. And this response is called disadvantageous inequity aversion. So this response has been produced in the lab. It's produced by having an allocator, the experimenter, offer two separately caged but side-by-side monkeys who can see each other food rewards, grapes or cucumbers. Grapes are very much preferred to cucumbers. When one receives a reward of lesser quality, cucumbers, he generally protests when he observes the partner receiving the better award, those grapes. So this is an interesting behavior discovered in these animals. Tossing away, having a fit over perfectly good food, it's not the behavior of an organism that you might expect. But there's even a level up of aversion, advantageous inequity aversion, or second order IA, is when the monkeys or animals are given unequal rewards, but this time when the animal receives a reward of lesser quality, the partner animal actually shares with them some of their reward of higher quality. This second order inequity aversion depends on the animals being able to think ahead about the repercussions of unfair, unequal allocations, including the protest of their conspecific and potential for them to lash out. So they want to forestall this protest by sharing their higher quality reward. It's also been found in some cases that animals might even reject the unequal distribution of higher low quality rewards entirely if that's the only option they can't share. So this behavior might seem even more surprising because we're seeing anticipation of aggression shape ongoing behavior and future cooperation behavior. Inequity aversion in non-human animals has been found to vary a lot. It's best predicted by how much members of a species cooperate outside the immediate kin group. IA is especially strong in very cooperative species like chimpanzees, brown capuchin monkeys, bonobos, and macaques. And they show group hunting behaviors, and they actually have some non-kin alliance networks. Inequity aversion is not observed in some other species who lack cooperation with non-kin. So inequity aversion is closely entangled with cooperation in different species. Inequity aversion is also related to partner choice. It's been found that individuals will not protest inequality if it's not easy to find a new exchange partner. And they've observed this by looking at different kinds of bonding or parenting systems where it's really costly to switch partners, pair bonding, dual parent systems. Species with costly breeding systems like this, they've been found to not show inequity aversion. These researchers note that even outside breeding systems, any long-term relationship that's hard to replace will reduce aversion to inequity in that relationship. For example, chimps in captivity for 30 plus years together showed much less inequity aversion than those who were housed together for just a short time. And congruently, human friends show less inequity aversion, less protest than acquaintances and colleagues. So inequity aversion is lower in species with breeding systems and parenting systems with high costs for partner switching. Clearly, Brosnan and DeWall understand that these reward-rejecting behaviors in equity aversion are reflective of a precursor of one of humans' most crucial moral values, fairness. They're also reflective of how a motivation toward equality, underlying cooperation, entails behaviors with a negative affective tone, like violent and aggressive behavior. And this can be counterintuitive. We typically dichotomize good and evil in terms of cooperation and aggression. So next you're going to see a TED Talk featuring Franz de Waal, which includes amazing footage of animals demonstrating cooperation.